Hey, we just had a conversation with Candy Barone in Workonomy, and it was such a good conversation. I wanted to pull her aside and go a little deeper into a few subjects, and specifically, I want to talk about more about fear of success, what that really means, because I know it is ambiguous. When I first heard that line, I scoffed at it because I was like, why would anyone be afraid of succeeding in what they wanted to do? That makes zero sense to me. But when you explained it, and as I thought about it, as a writer or as a former musician, the bigger the crowd got, the more scared I was. Right. So really, just that physical thought, that actual physical space of more people there was scarier to me. Yeah. So I know it has to go deeper than that. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how the fear of success is an issue, and how you can overcome something like that.
Yeah, and the fear of success is, I would say, a much bigger issue than fear of failure. People always say that they're afraid to fail, when actually they're more afraid of success, because with success comes so much more responsibility. We have an opportunity that we have to hold ourselves personally accountable at a much higher level. There's also a bigger spotlight that's on us the bigger that we grow. Mm-hmm. And so not only does that play into a space of, oh my God, I'm wide open and out there for everyone to see, but it taps into all those other fears, which is the fear of being judged and criticized. Because when you have a bigger message, when you show up more deliberately, when you are allowing yourself to succeed at higher levels, you also are triggering more people, creating more haters. Mm-hmm. You've got people that are showing up that are trying to shut you down. So that fear of criticism and judgment becomes really real. The other space around that is that imposter syndrome, right? Oh my God, who am I to stand up here and say X, Y, and Z? And so those become really in your face kind of fears that show up. But the fear of success is, if you think about Marianne Williamson's poem about our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. Because as we stand in a place, it means there's nothing to hide behind. It's kind of like, and I think about, because once upon a time I was really overweight, and it was easy for me to be like, oh, I'm just a smart, funny girl. I'm this I'm cute, I'm fun, I'm whatever. But when I lost the weight and people really started to pay attention to me, I freaked out and actually started to self-sabotage. Because the other piece around that is we have upper limits. And a great book is Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. He talks about this. But we have upper limits where we say, I can only be that successful. I can only be that happy. I can only be that wealthy, because somewhere we've got default programming that says, you're only worthy of X. And so greater success means we have to challenge that belief, and we have to stand in a space that says, oh my God, now there's nothing to hide behind. I'm standing out fully as me, full vulnerability, and for most people, that's scarier than death.
Yeah, I agree. And so when you think of somebody who embodies this, besides yourself, is there anyone in particular that you could point to be like, that is someone who overcame that fear and is just like the most genuine person in front of everyone?
I would say one of my best examples is Brene Brown. I think about when her first TED Talk went viral, and she is an expert in shame and vulnerability, yet she will be very clear that that is the space that makes her most uncomfortable. Because what most people don't realize is we teach what we need to learn. So the space where she literally wanted her husband to pull that off the internet when it went viral because of the amount of fear that showed up. And I remember there was a great episode on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, and I'm going to paraphrase because I never quote directly, but it was one where Brene was telling Oprah that she went out and read the comments, and Oprah's like, girl, never read the comments. And Brene's like, oh my God, I wanted to be in the fetal position. Oprah's like, no, my team vets out, I only read the good comments, etc. She goes, because that's like a two-bagger moment. And Brene was like, what? She goes, we all have that bag of chips that's hiding behind in the cabinet way back. She goes, man, you go out and read the comments, that's like 2 full bags. And I love that there was just such a vulnerability between both Brene Brown and Oprah. When you think, oh, Oprah Winfrey, right? She doesn't care. Those comments hurt. And so when we get out there, what happens is we miss the fact that 1,000 people sing our praises and say thank you. It's that one person that says, you're attacking me, you suck, how dare you, you're a fat cow, you're whatever words they put out there. We take that so personally. And because we as human beings have that space of wanting not people to see our deepest, darkest vulnerabilities, success triggers that.
We want people to see our Instagram stories, and that's about it.
The A-track, right?
Right.
So the more successful we get, the less we have to hide behind, and the more our vulnerabilities come to the surface. Of course, the fear of success makes people, you know, uncomfortable.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So don't read the comments. That's a good one. But what about how do you?
Oh yeah, there was a second part of that question.
How do you get over that? I mean, besides maybe going to see a psychotherapist and learning more about yourself and becoming just comfortable with who you are, right? Because I imagine that's probably the best way to go about it. Because like, if you know who you are, you're not apologetic about it, then you're not going to care what people think. But that's hard.
Well, it is, and there's a big piece of that. There is definitely your own self-awareness, your own growth, your own ability to say, look, I have to do this. And you and I were talking about this even before we got on the Workonomy talk. There was a great quote that I read that was in something I was doing with Russell Brunson stuff, but it was from Jay Abraham, and it says, if you truly believe that what you have brings value to your clients or to people in general, you have a moral obligation to serve that in every way possible. And for me, when you get into a space to realize we were all given a set of innate gifts and tools and a packaging of personality and energy and characteristics that makes us shine, that we all have a song to sing, whatever analogy you want to use, that it's actually, and this is the way I get, because I'm one of those, the boot in the butt moments and the strong language works for me, that I will tell myself, you're being self-absorbed and selfish when you make it about you. It's not about me. A message, if I can change one person's life, then it's not about me. It's about how I'm choosing to show up, how I'm choosing to serve, and how I choose to take personal responsibility. And it's that space of knowing that I don't know who, I don't know how, and I don't know to what level, and I can affect, influence, or impact change for another person. And when you start to understand that you have a moral obligation as a human being to offer your gifts, anytime you make it about you, I always tell people there's 3 questions I want you to ask. Well, and these are the 3 things that I want you to have somewhere front and center in every way possible, whether it's on your mirror, on your phone. I have a reminder that shows up as a notification every day, and it asks these questions. Because here's the thing. If you have to ask, am I playing small? The answer is yes. Because if you didn't ask the question, you would be in your sweet spot playing full out. You don't have to ask when you're playing your A game. You know you're playing your A game.
Right.
So if you even have to question, am I playing in my A game right now? Am I playing small? The answer is yes. There is no in between. The answer is yes. And then there are 3 follow-up questions I want you to ask. One is, who am I not serving in this moment? Whose permission am I taking away? And who am I not letting shine their light?
Awesome. And what I love about why that really resonated with me is because I really saw it in team sports, the way I see it. So I don't consider myself a leader in many respects, but on the basketball court or on the football field, naturally it just felt I was yelling orders. I'd never do that. I never yell orders, but I do it there. I also do it when I play video games with my friends too, because they're not listening to me and whatever. Anyway, that's a tangent. But what I love is that a good team captain, knows when to lead, but they also know the strengths of each of this person's the 3-point shooter. We're not going to give it to our center to shoot that 3-pointer. We're going to give it to our small forward or whatever. Yeah. I just think that's why it connected with me is it's the same idea for a business. You know what I mean? Not even business. It's the same for business, the same for family, same for personal life, social, whatever. It
is you, right? When we talk about life with balance, there's no such thing. There's your life. There's you. And I want to even challenge one of the things you just said, where it was, I was barking orders, so I don't feel like a leader in other spaces. Leadership has nothing to do with barking orders. Leadership has to do with standing in the space of full authenticity of who you are and integrity that says, look, I need to push the envelope a little bit. I need to create direction because no one else is taking that opportunity. I need to stand in my gifts, and I might be the quiet force that's behind the scenes. Whatever that is, leadership has all kinds of different demonstrations of how it shows up. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's one of the biggest areas that I am set out to disrupt, is the fact that leaders should be X, Y, and Z. It's a type A, highly driven, outspoken individual. No, it's not, because oftentimes those people are not demonstrating leadership. They're demonstrating egotistic, self-serving force, not power, because power is that space where you fully drop in. Real leadership is connected to your personal power.
Wow, cool. And can I ask you this? This is more about this is more personal now because I feel like I want to know this now. Can leadership take, for the same person, can leadership take different, for instance, like I said, barking orders on the court? I'm not like that in real life. I definitely considered myself a leader in the band that I was in for 8 years, but I was the quiet one. I was the one that was like, if everyone's goofing around, I'm just going to start playing the song until they catch on and they start playing. So that I feel like now that you mentioned that was a form of leadership too.
Yeah, leadership isn't a one-size-fits-all for an individual either. Of course, leadership takes a different kind of representation in different aspects of your life, because if you're really standing up in a place to listen for understanding, to connect and be present to other people's energy and what is needed in that space, leadership can be everything from that person who is driving, having the voice, motivate or inspiring, creating the movement, to the person who's underneath building all the pieces, quietly holding the space and everything in between. It also can be for any of us, it can be the space where sometimes the best leadership is when you let someone else step up. Sometimes the best leadership is when you don't offer another opinion because enough has been said. Not having to have the final word, leadership has all kinds of, and that's the thing, we think it's a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter. This is what being a leader is. Being a leader is being as real and authentic as possible in that moment and standing in integrity with who you are, period.
Why do you think there is that notion of the cookie cutter leader? Why is it? Because that's more advertised as such in media? Or, I mean, what makes people think that loud A-type, atypical person is a natural born? Because I've heard that many times in many jobs that I've had. It's like, oh yeah, he's a type A personality. He's the leader.
Because that's what we've built a culture around, and a lot of that comes from fear. What's amazing and interesting to me is when people say, oh, he's leading from fear, and I'm like, that's an oxymoron. True leadership comes from a place of love. Leadership comes from a place of seeing people, lifting people, seeing their strengths, and bringing something together that couldn't be brought together without that kind of influence. Leading from fear is ridiculous. It's, in my mind, it doesn't even make sense, because you can't be in a space of scarcity and fear and all about what's in it for me. And because leadership's an outward game, and it starts within. Actually, it's an in and out game, because you really have to know how to lead yourself first. But I think what happens is we've created this culture. It's come from our military, it's come from our business, it's come from the way we've built corporate. There is a model that we've agreed to, and because no one's stepped up to be a different kind of leader to challenge that in most spaces, people just get shut down and don't say. Most people don't use their voice at all when it comes to big business and organizations, and whenever they plug in and they play a role, and they kind of do the Groundhog's Day over and over again. Because there's such a fear of, what if I lose my job? What if this? They're so caught up in what if, and it stems from generations and generations of fear that's been handed down as a legacy. We have wounding and trauma and fear that's been given to us that's not even ours, and it just keeps compounding because no one's ever said, oh my God, stop.
Right.
Stop. And because we buy into stories that once served in 19 whatever that don't serve now, no one's ever said, how is that working for us? What if we hit pause and reset? Because something about this just doesn't feel right. Because like, I went and worked for a company, I still don't know how I got the job, but they were like, well, this is what we've done for 155 years. And my response was, wow, your doors are still open. They were like, what? I'm like, I don't know if that's something I would hang my hat on, that you haven't changed anything in your business model. Yeah. Business has changed drastically in the last 6 months, let alone the last 155 years. Right. You're going to tell me that you're doing nothing to keep up with the fact that people are needing something different. I mean, I look at the millennials versus Gen Xers. Something's got to give when by 2027, 70% of the workforce is going to be millennials, and we're still creating the same cultures. Right. Business is going to implode. Organizations, they already are. There's so many businesses that are closed because there's not an appetite to be treated that way anymore. And until enough people, all it takes is 15% of any population to create a tipping point. As soon as 15% shows up and says that's not okay with us, that's how real change starts to happen.
Gotcha. So what would you recommend to, let's say, a business, small business, medium business, even big business, if they have been doing, like, what would you tell them if they've been doing something for 20 years and they have seen growth only? So I think that's where people fall into that trap, because they're like, well, we're still seeing growth, or it's not, at least it's not dipping.
Right.
What
I would
you tell
ask
them?
two things. I'm like, first of all, I would say yes and I would say, is it real growth or is it perceived growth? Because let's dig into that, because what does your culture look like? I would start to look at return on investment. For me, is a much bigger game than money in versus money out. It's a function of time, energy, money, resources, people, culture, and lifestyle you're creating. So I would start to dig into, and let's talk about what's the health of your employees look like. Mm-hmm. How much are you spending in insurance for medical expenses and things? How much time off are people taking? Whatever. Because there's a real story underneath. The numbers are only as good as the context they live in. It's like when people say 4 out of 5 dentists. I'm like, great. Is that 4 out of 5 or 400 out of 500? Or whatever, because it's all contextual. And so numbers are only as good as the story that they're being told in. So it's really great to say, oh, this company is really growing, when actually when you dig down, you're spending a ton of money on people who are out for anxiety, fear, stress-related illnesses. You're spending time on the fact that you've got a lot of people calling in sick because they're just burnt out, they're overwhelmed, whatever. That's costing you. How much turnover do you have? How are you retaining your employees? Mm-hmm. Do you have wellness programs? Whatever. When you start to get under the cover, it looks very different. So that's one thing I would challenge every company to say, what is your real ROI, and are you looking at it across that scale? The other thing that I would say is you may be growing, but how much are you still leaving on the table? Because if you're growing and not changing, imagine what would happen if you did, because what are you leaving on the table because you're not looking at something different, new. And I would also, and this is one that people have a lot of words for me about, I would have the executives, the board, bring in a child somewhere between the age of 5 to 12 to come in and sit in one of their strategy meetings and be a truth teller for what's really going on. Children are phenomenal.
I really like that.
And I have some executives that have done this, and it's amazing. And people that have done their, bring your kid to work day. It's been very telling, because a kid they only know the truth.
Right.
And they will be very clear about what's broken, what's working, what's a dysfunction. They'll ask the right questions that most of the leadership team is afraid to bring front and center. So bring a kid in. Let them experience the culture, and you'll see whether or not it's really growing or not.
Because the kid arguably doesn't have that filter that's been put on all of us in our growing up.
No, and they ask brilliant questions, because they'll ask, how come 20 people are in this room when it seems that only that guy's opinion matters? 8
other people on their phone, right? Yeah.
I mean, they notice everything.
Yeah.
And it's amazing,
and they're not
the kind
afraid
of
to say
conversations. They're not. Well, they'll just ask questions.
Yeah.
Because they'll want to know why things are a certain way. And it's amazing how something as out of the box such as that could be a game changer for you to get into the underbelly of what's really going on in your organization.
And then I would ask, would you find it maybe helpful if someone could put themselves in that mindset of like, let me think back to being a 12-year-old?
Sure, but most people have been so far detached from their inner child that that's not a walk they can do by themselves.
It would be inauthentic.
No, it's not even that it would be inauthentic, they don't know how. Okay. There's people that would truthfully be in a space where they've gotten so locked in adulting that they wouldn't know how to tap into how their 12-year-old mind used to think. They're too busy analyzing, too busy trying to be logical, pragmatic, that they can't, one of the biggest things I do with people is teach them how to play for 3 to 5 minutes a day. It's amazing to me, people that can't even allow themselves 3 to 5 minutes to let go. And how much of a game changer that is when they learn how to do that. I've had C-level executives who are like, that'll jam out to like Manamana or blow bubbles or something, and it's amazing the shift. But it takes 3 to 5 minutes, and you have that every day, and most people don't even give themselves that much time.
Wow.
Most people have a schedule that's so tight, they're not even giving themselves a chance to go to the bathroom,
right,
let alone
eat,
play.
Anything, yeah.
That was my schedule when I was in corporate. I'm like, when the hell am I going to go to the bathroom today? Right. I am jam-packed from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, straight. And some of them are duplicate meetings. Like, I'm multitasking, which that's a whole nother topic for another day, and the myth. But I had 15 different things going on at once. I wonder why everybody's burnt out.
Okay, so thank you for answering those questions. The multitasking, you kind of triggered me with that, because I multitask a lot.
There's no such thing. There's switch tasking, there's no multitasking.
Okay, so I know we're probably running out of time because you're a busy person, but real quick, Talk to me about multitasking versus, what was it?
Switch tasking.
Switch tasking.
Yeah, multitasking is actually not even possible. Scientifically, neurologically, you cannot be present in two things at the same time. It is absolutely impossible for humans to focus on two things and be fully present. People like, I walk and talk. Yep, both automated responses. Because if you were fully focused and present in walking, like when a child's learning to walk, you see the concentration. They cannot do anything else. They might grunt just because it's an audible sound, but they are only looking at how to get their feet moving in front of them. Once we've created an automated response, it becomes something that's innate to us, like brushing our teeth, whatever. You're not present in those activities. And it's not to say that you have to be present all day long, because that would burn you out as well. Mm-hmm. But when you are fully present in something, when you are having a meaningful conversation, when you are invested in something, you cannot do something else and be fully present in both those activities. What happens is we switch tasks. So we go from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing. And what we don't realize is, from a focus management and time management perspective, it takes up to 25 minutes every time we get off task and lose our presence and focus on that one thing. So imagine when people are like, I don't have enough time in my day. It's because they're wasting all this time with this idea that they're multitasking. And I even get people that are interviewing for new jobs. They're like, well, what if they ask me in the interview, do I multitask? And I said, the way you respond is no. Actually, what I do is I prioritize so that the most urgent and effective things get done, so that we can create the highest productivity and efficiency for this organization. And if multitasking is a requirement for this job, thank you, but no thank you. This isn't the space for me. Because ultimately, and this goes back to what we were talking about in Workonomy, ultimately it's your choice. You have a responsibility. It amazes me when people are like, oh, my boss doesn't promote me. Okay, first of all, have you asked what's required to get promoted? Mm-hmm. Have you created clear metrics so you know what you're being held accountable to? And if that boss is still not promoting you, find another champion that does. Because ultimately, you are the person responsible for your career and what value you put into this world. And so it's the same thing when it comes to your interview. That interview needs to be as much about you qualifying and dequalifying opportunities that aren't meant for you. And I've told this, I tell people the fastest way for me to shut an interview down when I was building my teams was when I would say, so Jason, what questions do you have for me? Mm-hmm. And your response would be, oh, Candy, I'm good, I got this. And I'd be like, okay, great, I think we're done. HR will contact you next week, and I guarantee the minute you walked out of my office, I shredded your resume, you got a call from HR that said thanks, but no thanks. Because that single question is indicative of whether or not you're going to take responsibility in your own growth and development, mm-hmm. and also whether or not you're going to challenge anything. Because I don't want yes people on my team. I want people that are going to say, can I ask a question? Where did this come from? Why are we doing this? And how does this work for what we're trying to move forward? Have you thought about how this, and this is going to do that? Right. I want people that challenge the status quo. I want people that challenge me. I want people that are in that space to take ownership for how they're going to lead in their role, in their space, and in their gifts. And somebody that's not willing to answer those questions.
And that's how you're approaching, your growth right now, right?
Exactly.
Perfect.
Good full circle.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, where can I do that?
Have a good full circle.
Awesome, Candy. Thanks so much. We've been here for a while, so I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Sorry, I was looking at multitasking. I was kind of doing that.
That's
kind of rude.
That's
kind of rude. So I'm going to look at you and say thank you so much again. It's always awesome hanging out with you.
You too.